Can you guys hear the music? No. Okay, wait. I have to do advanced sharing option. Okay, I can't figure this out. Oh, well, I tried. I could hear the music. I was enjoying it. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Journey to College 2025, an initiative to bring to you the most authentic information directly from the mouths of the people who've just been through the process themselves. For everybody who's logged in to this session on time, I really appreciate you being here. We're going to get started now, and hopefully, as people roll in, they'll continue to see us either live or on YouTube. Our panelists are here today, and our panel comprises of four applicants who were at the same place where you are this year. All of these four people are here to share with you what made the application stand out, what were the obstacles that they faced, the missteps you need to avoid, but also what ultimately got them their dream admit. Sarah, Agnibha, Sachi, Kaushik, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
All right. All right. Now we're going to go into an icebreaker. Okay, that's what we're going to launch ourselves with today. So all four of you can be unmuted if you like. Of course, if there are any disturbances behind, we'll just work around it. We're going to start with an easy question for all four of you. Boys first. So Agniba, Kaushik, Sachin, and Sarah. The most stressful part of the application process for you was?
Yeah, so personally, the most stressful part was definitely writing the essays, statement of purposes, because I applied to a really wide breadth of schools. So there were a lot of different types of essays, and trying to get all of them done in a unique fashion that wasn't like super repetitive while also using my own voice was something that I was pretty worried about. Especially going from undergraduate to graduate school, in terms of admissions, that was like the one thing I was like, okay, this is something that I really need to do well. But the red pen made the process super easy, and I received a lot of help on my essays, especially my personal um, SOP. And I took that and I was able to switch it up and pivot for every single essay topic that I had. So yeah.
Got it. The most stressful was the essays. All right, Kaushik.
Uh, yeah, I think the most stressful portion of the entire application process is actually the in-between times. It's a really long process. So I think every time there's a lot of like you do a little thing and then you wait and then you sort of gauge the response and then move forward. So I think the more time there was in between, the more second guessing and all of that sort of happened. So that was really the most anxiety-inducing portion.
Okay, I think well put. Prachi, how about
So for me, the most stressful part was managing the multiple deadlines while trying to have the perfect essay because I was also balancing the GRE prep, the internships, and the deep self-reflection all at once, which felt really overwhelming. And not to mention applying for that admit after waiting for that admit after finishing an application. You know, you have sleepless nights, how the admission committee is going to feel about your application, what feedback are they going to have, whether you've done everything right, and etc. That was, I think, the
Okay.
most challenging part.
time management and multitasking? Got it. Sarah, how about you?
I feel for me the most challenging part was definitely chasing down recommendation letters, mainly because that is the portion of your application that is not entirely in your control. So at some points I felt I was tiptoeing the line between being like politely persistent and mildly annoying. So coordinating with busy professors and colleagues was definitely a juggling act, all while handling my own deadlines.
Okay, that's amazing because that's exactly who you were in the process. I mean, I know even though you and I didn't work together,
Right,
but you
right.
were always so clear about you wanted the full control of everything that I can imagine this being very anxiety provoking for you. So it's amazing how each one of you said something that was so inherent to your personality. Okay, so the first part of our conversation is going to be about college lists and your course choices. Okay, but I'm going to focus entirely on the strategy and the part of the college list building. Um, Sarah, we'll start with you. Okay, your story is powerful. You retook the GRE. Okay, but you built a college list that accounted for your GPA. And then you put a lot of trust in your team, right? And now the reason why it's commendable is because you are who you are. You always like to own your own control a lot. So for you to be able to give us that trust and work with us through that college building process, take us through that and also take us through this amazing rapport that you shared with your counselor. So then what role did that play in your college list strategy?
Sure. So firstly, for me, retaking the GRE was definitely a turning point. My first score didn't turn out as expected, but I believed it didn't reflect my true potential. So I decided to take a step back and retry. And I'm glad I did because the second score really boosted my application and my confidence. So when it came to building my college application list, I was very intentional, and so was my counselor. So we focused on schools that took a holistic approach, that valued things like extracurriculars, research experience, teaching experience, and things like that, and not just GRE scores or GPA. And personally, this is just my opinion, but I didn't include schools in my list that were just because they were safe options. Um, so every program in my list was something I would be genuinely happy to attend if I got in. Um, so yeah, otherwise, because all of us know the college application process is very tiresome. So
Yeah.
I think just applying to schools because they're safe was just going to be a waste of my time and my counselors. So yeah, and I made sure I was being realistic. I took a hard look at my materials and only applied to programs where I knew I'd be a strong fit. So the role my counselor played was helping me balance ambition with realism. So she helped me think critically about where I want to be and where I'd thrive and not just where I could get in. So that clarity just made the whole process really smooth for me.
Once you kind of got the intention of the role, then I think you were like, you started trusting her so much more, and then it was
Right,
this was
right.
seamless up. Yeah. Kaushik, we'll talk to you now. Okay. A lot of research. And you are inherently somebody who came to me with a lot of with openness. You were very open-minded. You were not marrying a country, you were not marrying a particular program. So we actually first spent the initial few weeks just looking at the different courses, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But in terms of your college list, you didn't restrict yourself to rankings, to location, nothing. And eventually you've chosen Utrecht over NYU, right? So take us through the decision-making process and what were your thoughts there? Because
Yeah.
again, fighting that FOMO is real.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
I want to know about.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think we sort of started with a very broad base. We were looking at a lot of courses that were within my interest area. And I think we, what we did was to sort of understand the narrative so far to sort of see what kind of experiences I bring in terms of my foundational study, which was architecture, and then some of my work experience so far, and what are the questions that that work is asking, and things like that. Then after that, we sort of moved into looking at courses that are relevant to the questions I want to ask, and sitting with the courses, the universities, their offerings, and looking at little sects of universities at a time and see how to compare between the two. And that's basically how we sort of, I think we had the kind of time also to do that back and forth. So um,
And
finally picking Utrecht was, yeah, it was basically that. It was like a process of slow elimination.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think you also, the person that you are was so inherent to, again, that because you're so detail oriented and we started work early, it made sense to engage your intellectual capacities in doing that deeper dive so
Yeah.
that at the end of it, when the admits came, you already knew what you wanted actually.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there was a lot of
Much time
room
was spent.
between that time period to ask a lot of questions. That was
Yeah.
really, I think, I think the most fun part of this entire back and forth of the counseling team was also to be able to come back with every session with a bunch of questions and just sort of sit with those.
Yeah, yeah. It did become a very interesting deep dive of the college list with you. Agnibha, for you, I want to talk about uh, working not from a place of looking at any aspect of your profile as a weakness, because when we look at the US, specifically as a region, even for their undergrad process, they are into this whole feeder school situation and they're into these target high schools, non-target high schools. And it's a very gimmicky word in the United States. Are you from a target school? Are you from a non-target school? And so I'm just using that language and saying, okay, well, you came from a non-target undergrad US college, right? So you are actually competing for your master's seats with the Columbia undergrads and the U Chicago and the UIUC undergrads. So then in your case, what parameters were you very critically looking at when you were looking at your college list? I mean, and your college list was super realistic. I mean, Sarah, you were talking about not including safeties. So that was your approach was like, hey, listen, I'm going to just not give myself an option to not do well, right? And Agniva was the exact opposite, where he was like, I am going to spread such a wide net that when I catch my fish is when I'm going to sit back and figure out which fish I want to fry today. Literally, that was his approach. So, Agnibat, the question to you is how did you ensure that this college list was so realistic and yet ambitious? Because catching a UCLA
Yeah.
fish was not easy. So, how did that happen?
Yeah, I think honestly, going to Northern Kentucky, I knew that it wasn't a target school. And that was something that I knew I wanted to change. Going to Northern Kentucky was great, but it just wasn't a target school. And I wanted to change that going into my graduate program. So that was something that I talked with my family about a lot, especially my dad. It was to be able to go to a school that I knew I could get some really great connections at and get a really good education at. And so that was the main thing that I was looking at while creating my college list. And obviously, there's schools that have super small admit percentages. And there's also schools that have larger admit percentages that are really good places to go and get a degree at. So I wanted to realistically look at what are some of the best schools for the subject I was looking at, which was quantitative or financial economics. And then also find places that, as Sarah was saying, places that I knew I would be happy at, that I had a relatively higher chance of getting into. So I know that there were a couple of schools that I kept that I was like, all right, these are like my safeties, but I will still be very happy going to these schools if I were to be admitted. And then I had all my other schools that I was like, all right, these are all schools that I really want to get into. And I know when I first came into the process, I had a massive list of like 30 different schools. And yeah, the biggest thing was just cutting that list down to what schools match what I want to do the best. And I think that's where I was really able to differentiate and like create that super realistic list with like a super wide net, um, but still apply to like these prestigious schools. Um, and also schools that I was sure that, I would at least have a good chance of getting into.
Yep, got it. And so that balance definitely worked in your favor. And now, Sachi, for you, I want to ask a little more technical question of first the decision about working for a year, right? How did that play out for you? Right now, in retrospect, do you think it was a smart choice or not? And then the second, what made you decide to pursue management and strategy at LSE, at London School of Economics? And talk to us a little bit about the impact of this work experience in that college list building process.
So firstly, taking that year gap was the best decision for me because initially I was torn between pursuing a career in finance or entering the pharmaceutical sector where my family business lies. So I knew I wanted to make an informed decision and not just follow a predefined path. So that is the main reason why I chose to intern. So I had like 4 internships during my undergrad and 1 after that. So my internships ranged from asset management at Ambit to portfolio analysis at Equipoise Capital to the business development roles that I did at ML Pharma and my father's company. And eventually I realized that while I enjoyed finance, what actually excited me was applying the strategic thinking in the business context, especially in the pharma space. So that's when the Masters in Management and Strategy program at the London School of Economics stood out for me because the course offers a very good blend of analytical depth, the strategic insight, and the global perspective that I was looking for. And more importantly, it also aligned very well with my long-term goal of contributing meaningfully to our company's growth and expanding our presence in the India's pharmaceutical market. So I would say for me, my work experience didn't just strengthen my application, it actually shaped my college list because it empowered me to make real business decisions and lead effectively. So that's where LSE ticked all the boxes for me, and LSE became a more goal-driven decision for me.
Fair. And so if I had to just close out this college list conversation, from what we've heard from Sarah, Kaushik, Agniba, and Sachi, I'm thinking use your data effectively, be intentional about colleges that connect with what you are having to offer them. Do your research well, spend all the free time that you have looking at the whys and asking the questions about where am I fitting in? What is it that I'm learning? Why is it that I'm going to pick this college? Balance the strategy out. Use a list that is just not top heavy, like, oh, I want to go here, or just being bottom focusing, I'll get in. but more about, okay, each one has to offer something to me that I'll be happy to take away and walk away with, no matter what it is that I get into. And finally, reflect on your goals. Be authentic first before being strategic. See, the reality is that a lot of people land really good at MITS, but not everybody's happy at that college. If you're not going to be authentic after the process is over about where you really want to spend your time, forget money, then that process is not going to work out for you. You're not going to graduate the top 1, 2, 3% of your grad school class. And that's the whole goal. The whole goal is to thrive. And so this is a reminder to everybody who logged in to listen in today. Rankings will not determine your success. Your friends' college list will not determine your success. Only your authentic fit will determine your success in your master's or PhD program. So build a list that is smart, well researched, and it gives you satisfaction to look at the whole list and say, no matter where I go, I'm going to walk away happy. I don't care what admit I get out of this list. Because AI cannot do that for you. Only you can. Or somebody who's going to be able to guide you can. ChatGPT and some other random website can give you a list, but that doesn't mean that the list is applicable to you specifically. So that's my takeaway from this part of the conversation, and I'm quite excited to roll on to the next part of the conversation because it's the lengthiest bulk of our session today, which is going to cover essays and recommendations and the standardized test GRE. Sarah touched upon it slightly, but we're going to go a little deeper into it with others. Sarah, I'm going to start with you again. First and foremost, I do want to applaud you for ignoring herd mentality. Okay, in the last decade, every student who's STEM interested most often will come to us and say, I want to do computer science. I'm talking from the undergrad perspective. Okay, you said, well, okay, yeah, everybody can do comp sci. You probably also thought in your head, I can do comp sci, but you said, first, I'll do foundational math. I'll do applied math first. I'll spend time building this core interest, this core skill that I have, and then later you pivoted to comp sci, right? And in that much time, Sarah, and even after you've pivoted, you've built a lot of skills outside of the classroom. You've kind of constantly found ways and reasons to apply your skills and transfer it. It's almost like you're doing like a session where you're like learning something, trying to then see if you're able to apply it and then go back to the drawing board. And there seems to be this pattern of skill application that you bring as the person that you are. But what that also means that you had a lot of experience to cover, a lot of ground to cover in your essays, right? So I think the focus that I want you to bring to our session today is that how did you bring that depth of experience into your essays, considering that you've had this journey in your undergrad of applied math, then comp sci, and then doing so much skill-related work? Was it challenging?
So thank you so much. Firstly, like it was quite interesting to me also because I had never done computer science before. And I randomly walked into like an introduction to CS class and I figured I enjoyed it more than math. I really love math, so that means something. So that's how I pivoted into computer science. But coming back to the essays, that was definitely a challenge, but also the most rewarding part of the process. I had a diverse set of experiences to work with, right from 3 years of experience as a software engineer at Visa to my internship in the gaming industry to like my research experience plus teaching assistantships. So I had a lot of ground to cover. And at first, it felt really overwhelming. Like, how am I going to tie all of this together into one 2-page essay? So I didn't want it to feel like my resume in story format. I don't know if all of you can relate, but the more I reflected, I just felt like all of these experiences were just like expressions of who I am. So what I did was I tried to focus on the breadth rather than trying to narrow it down too much. So I tried to relate all of these experiences back to my long-term goal or short-term goals. So once I had that through, the essays became more of listing what all I have done and less of listing what all I had done and more of kind of explaining why it mattered to me in the big picture. So I feel like it ties a lot into your long-term goals and what you want to accomplish in the short term.
Got it. Got it. No, that makes complete sense. In terms of the depth, right? Like I said, it was so much depth that it was hard to curtail it. So I understand the focus now. And Sachi, how did your internships kind of translate into the essays without, like Sarah said, listing it like a resume?
So yeah, Sarah rightly said, simply listing the internship doesn't add much value. What really helped me was starting early because I had the time to brainstorm with my counselor and reflect on how each of the experiences contributed to my personal as well as academic growth. And for instance, during my internship at ML Pharma, the concepts that I learned in strategic financial management course at college, they helped me contribute more effectively at that internship, especially when analyzing the future sales projection. So I mentioned that in my essay. I also showed how my internships weren't isolated experiences, they built on each other. So, like the skills that I picked up from ML Pharma were directly useful when I joined my father's company. I highlighted such transitions to demonstrate a growth trajectory and like a growth and continuity in my learning journey. And also in my essays, I talked about specific projects that I did, like researching, sourcing data, and preparing an investor pitch at Equipoise Capital, which directly aligned with the problem solving and the strategic thinking focus of the LSC program. So the key was not to just list what I did, but to reflect on how those experiences shaped my perspective, helped me move closer to my goal, and prepared me for the masters at LSE. So that approach actually made my essay more personal as well as purposeful.
Wow. Good. Big words. I remember in the beginning of your essay process, again, you and I didn't work on essays directly, but there was a lot of generic vagueness, and it took you a
Yeah.
long time
Yeah, that's
for
why
a
that
content specialist.
the first point was starting early. I remember having so many brainstorming sessions. I think I almost took like 1.5, 2 months or so to make an SOP for me.
Yeah.
I remember it was a
So,
big
yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of this clarity that everybody's hearing today from Sachi, that's taken weeks to build out. Yeah.
I'm
It's
gonna
amazing.
come to that. Yeah, we'll talk about that in detail soon.
Okay, got it. Kaushik, going on to you, right? Now, of course, there's work experience, there's entrepreneurship, right? Because you didn't like work for anybody else but yourself. So that cross-disciplinary nature of the course, the urban design, entrepreneurship, but sustainability, we started everywhere. How did you end up bringing all of this complex theories and concepts into this one coherent narrative?
So I think, yeah, like you said, I don't think the whole, when I was accumulating this learning and working experience, I don't think I had a master's or a goal sort of in mind. I've been very curiosity driven. So that's why the whole broad spectrum of seemingly disparate things. But what we did was basically to kind of lay it out authentically, to say, okay, these are the things that have happened so far, and to pull common threads from that. And for me, I think mainly it was, what am I concerned about? What are my areas of interest? What do I want to put my energy into? And here, I think while looking at architecture, while looking at my internship experience, my work experience, the common threads were this exploring this people-place connection, and environmental sciences concern for human rights, all of these sort of things. So I think that's where we sort of pulled from the existing experience into a coherent narrative, and to present that as a, see, this is what I care about, and I think your course aligns with this. So I'm applying because of that.
From personal curiosity, is the goal still the PhD? Or are you like, I'm open right now, I'm going to see what my opportunities are like?
I think I'm open now. I'm seeing that there's a lot of other work that's also happening within and outside the university system. And it's also not black and white, I'm realizing. There's a lot of things that happen in between. So right now it's we'll see how things go, and then
Yes, and this is such an amazing part of this essay process. Not only is it cathartic, but
yeah.
it's also a process that it forces us to sit back and reflect on what are the opportunities that are out there and what do I really seek for myself?
Yeah, I think one other thing I wanted to also say was that while we laid all these experiences out, I think we go through a lot of life experiences without asking a lot of these imperative questions. So here it was more a process of just putting stuff down, and then we would discuss very often. And I remember the counselor also asking me, okay, why did you do this? What do you think you sort of gained out of this experience? And then I would come back with one iteration of describing that. And then the second, so I said, yeah, we make working drawings. And then he's like, okay, what skills does this say? And I was like, drawing. And he was like, no, expand on that. So that really helped kind of also understand what I'm coming from and what I'm going into.
Yeah. So basically, it built critical thinking for you, like
Yes.
reflection, critical
Yeah.
thinking. And I think that's such an important element of our essay writing process. And I mean, Agniba, I'm sure you're going to be able to provide evidence of that because here you are, this young undergrad senior at Northern Kentucky University, and you're grabbing every opportunity with 5 hands. You're like this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm making sure my GPA, like, where is all this self-motivation and initiative coming from? One, because also it's very refreshing to see somebody so young nowadays, but also how are you then being able to put that all in together for your essay? Because you're just at it all the time. You're all the time doing something. So how did you bring all of that together then?
Yeah, thank you for that. But honestly, a lot of it was I came to NKU and I didn't really have the best first year. And so I tried transferring out, and after that didn't work out, I was like, you know what? I going to try and make the best of the time that I have here and try and take every opportunity that I have. And I've been very lucky to be able to work on a bunch of really cool things and to be able to work with a lot of cool people and just be supported by professors to take more opportunities and learn as much as I could. And honestly, a lot of it came from intrinsic, again, like curiosity of the subject of like entrepreneurship or venture capital. And I just kind of reached out and yearned for those kind of opportunities and to learn as much as I could, especially given the ecosystem that we have here. And putting all of that into essay form was really hard. I remember my initial draft was just a lot of just word vomit, and I was trying to like get everything in, like I did this, I worked with that person, and a lot of the comments that I got were, you know, why this experience, why are you talking about this, what is the purpose of this? And through that I kind of realized every single sentence in my essay needs to have a purpose, and it needs to be tied back to whether that's the school or the program or long-term or short-term goals. None of it can really be filler because you only get so many words and you're trying to convince someone that doesn't even know you that you deserve a place at a school and that you're going to do good things there. And you're trying to give them evidence of what you've learned and what you've done. So yeah, I think just being able to really hone in on why am I doing these things and why is it important for my future program or my future career was like the biggest thing that I took from writing my essays.
I think if I remember your last draft, that I'm going to push my comfort zone yet again was the common theme through your whole essay. Like it just came across. Eventually, I walked away thinking, if I was an admission officer, that would be my takeaway. That he's just going to
Yeah.
keep pushing the comfort zone. He's just going to keep trying to get more and more opportunities and more mentorship as much as he can. But maybe I was biased because I knew you. If I had not been your core counselor, then maybe it would have been different. But I
Maybe,
could see
yeah,
it. And I liked it. I liked that thread because that was who you were as a person,
yeah,
right?
thanks. Yeah.
I'm asking on behalf of the content team. Any of you need any more help knowing your own story hereafter? Each one of you had amazing essays. Please do not ever doubt yourself again on saying that I don't know if I can ever write a reflective essay or a technical essay. You guys did a fantastic job, each one of you. All
Thank-
right, now moving on to that one thing that made Sarah lose control in the process with the recommendations. She's like, I almost became a stalker, but then I didn't. So we'll talk about recommendations, and this is for all four of you. Take a moment to reflect on these questions. Why and who did you pick as your recommender? And what did you want them to highlight? And do you really think that the recommendation made a difference to your application process? Sachi, should we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So according to me, yes, it's a big yes for the letter of recommendations being very important because they can add real depth to your applications, and especially if they come from people who genuinely know you. For me, for LSE, I had two academic LORs. So my very first recommendation came from Professor Bhumi Rathod, with whom I shared a very strong academic as well as research connection. She taught me multiple subjects across my 3 years of undergrad, and I also co-authored 3 to 4 research papers with her. So since we worked so closely, she could authentically comment on my research skills as well as my academic consistency. And the second letter of recommendation came from Professor Rita Jain, who again taught me at least one subject every semester during my undergrad. And more than just academics, she spoke about, like, she'd seen me grow as a person. So she spoke about my overall journey from a first year student to someone who was ready to pursue a rigorous master's abroad. So her letter focused more on my growth as an individual, my leadership skills, my contribution in the class, as well as outside of it. So I think both the LORs complemented each other very beautifully because one highlighted on my academic and the research skills, and the other one reflected on my personal development and consistency over time. So together, I think they gave LSE a very good picture of me as a person beyond just the grades and the internships. So yes, I believe that is a significant dimension to my application.
Yeah, application. I think you also brought out an important point. You were going for a program in management and strategy, with your goals being about applying it to your own work business, but you still showcase research as a course fit.
Research, yes. Yes.
And that's a really
definitely.
important point that you brought out, that you're going as a student first. And that's what LSE wants
Sure.
to see, your research skills, your student skills. All right, Kaushik, how about you? LORs.
So I had 3 LORs written out for me, and I think, yeah, we've already spoken about the whole like back and forth that happens. You have to sort of put your request out and then wait for it to come back. But I think, like Sachi had said, I also relied very heavily on the familiarity that I've built with these people. So I had 2 academic letters of recommendation and one from my professional experience. With the academic experience, I think one was just the duration that one of my professors had spent with me. She's seen me from all the way from when I was like in 4th semester to the very end, 10th sem. And there's a lot of ups and downs. I remember telling her, okay, look, don't feel too bad about the 9th sem assignment that I didn't submit. And she's like, no, it's all you. So it's going. She was also somebody who told me that she will not show me the recommendation letter and that she will submit it straight to the university. So that was one that I absolutely trusted her on, and she made the impression for me. And the other professor, he was my mentor during my thesis. And that's when I think I asked a lot of very important questions that I wanted to continue studying on and also continue growing along the lines of. So we've had a lot of these very half existential, half professional journey sort of questions. And I think he was able to kind of add on to that and say, okay, how do I learn? What are my curiosities and how do they sort of sustain through one study period? And the third was a professional, my project architect from where I worked at. And the reason I picked this particular place and the project architect was because I really enjoyed the work at Unashala and it was most relevant to the courses that I wanted to study. I think the kind of space it exists in is also sort of relevant to this whole people-place connection and things like that. So I think the relevance of the work drives is really where that came from. And the project architect and I were quite close while we worked. So it was like a one-on-one attention thing. So he was able to tell the universities what it was like working with me for a period of 1 year in a professional setting. So that's
Right. How many other work experience do you have, Kaushik?
so I have three workplaces that I've sort of worked in, and these are on 4 years now.
4 years, right? And so you still believed in giving 2 academic recommendations.
Yes,
So
because I was going for a research degree, so I think that sort of. But also, I think some places require you to give 3 recommendation letters. Some places require you to give 2,
two.
and some don't require recommendation letters at all. I thought that these were three very distinct points, and I felt like the professional letter was strong on its own. So I had that, and then I had 2 academic.
But also having 2 academic, because you are a research master's,
Yes.
definitely worked in your favor,
Hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
So that was a really smart move. Sarah, you also have WorkX. How many years WorkX?
So I have 3 years of WorkX. Yeah.
And how many academic did you submit?
Well, I had, for places that required 4, I had 2 professional and 2 academic. But for places that required 3, I had 2 professional and 1 academic.
Right. And tell us about your strategy, recommendation strategy then.
Yeah, so I feel like unlike Kaushik, I think my professional letters of recommendation more accurately describe, what I've been up to. So I just reached out to them to write my letter of recommendation. So one of them was my manager, and one was a senior colleague who also happens to be my mentor. And for my academic letter of recommendation, I reached out to the head of department of computer science at my undergrad university, which was Stony Brook, and which helped because I've also done a teaching assistantship for him. So I think my piece of advice would be, as like a lot of you mentioned, to choose people who know you really well and you've built a connection with them over time because they know your story, and they know your long-term goals. Also, you don't feel, I mean, it helps because you can annoy them more often also.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And
I mean,
I
thinking your story, if you had the HOD and you didn't have a TA with that person, it wouldn't make sense just because they're an HOD. It
right.
makes sense because you spend so much one-on-one time being mentored by that person on building teaching skills.
Yes.
So
And for places that required 4 letters, I chose a professor that I'd done a research assistantship with. So again, that one-on-one connection really makes a difference. So things I told them to like focus on was definitely like the impact I made through my work, whether it's like a teaching assistantship or a project I worked on, rather than just stating like these were her job responsibilities. I felt like impact over just job duties made a difference. Also, something I told them to focus on was soft skills, because I feel a lot of the application process is just metrics. And this is the place where the reviewer can really know you as a person. And when a recommender says things about you, I feel like it just adds credibility. So soft skills is definitely something I ask them to focus on.
yeah, that's great advice, Sarah. Focus on soft skills. Agnibha, your turn.
Yeah, I feel like again my journey with my LORs were very similar. I prioritized asking professors and my boss at my previous internship because I was super familiar with them. I asked for 2 academic and 1 professional letter of recommendation. And so one of the academic ones was he's the director of the Center of Innovation Entrepreneurship at NKU. And I'd worked with him since my first year at the school. So I'd known him for a very long time, worked with him in professional, extracurricular, and academic capacities. So he was able to give like a super broad letter of recommendation. And then my boss, so I worked at the entrepreneurial hub of Northern Kentucky, and he was the executive director there. And so he was able to give more of a professional letter of recommendation, and I wasn't able to see any of them because I waived the rights for that. But I know that they touched upon a lot of the soft skills that Sarah was talking about. And then my final letter recommendation was from an economics professor that I had for a couple of years, and I worked with her on my senior seminar research report. And so with her, all of my classes have been very quant and very just hard skills heavy. And so I know that she was able to touch upon that in my letter of recommendation. And with each and every one of these people, I've talked about what my long-term goals and short-term goals are. And so I think it was super important in making that clear for them where I saw myself going career-wise and also academically. So they were able to craft their letters of recommendation accordingly.
Wow. So a lot of thought went in. I mean, I'm hearing it across the panel. Each one of you gave it time. You all thought through the strategy about who to do it with, who to use, and what story, right? And of course, your counselors would have told you that the story angles are important and what is this one highlighting versus what is that one. But Agniba, you brought on a good point. Like everybody needs to waive their right. Because if you, ideally, you're not supposed to see it. So Kaushik had a recommender who said, I'm not going to show it to you. And Sarah probably had, right? So from Stony Brook. So the reality is that if you had these relationships long term, they are going to be authentic and they're going to give you that opportunity to not write about that one document that you didn't submit or whatever. So it's important to invest in those relationships and build those mentoring out. And even now that the four of you are going to go into grad school, please find your people, find your tribe, find your mentors on campus, not because you're going to do another next one or you may or may not, but because in life, you know that it's a symbiotic relationship which feeds through generations where you have a mentor, somebody you can look up to and just go bounce ideas off. And it'll be an amazing relationship to have in grad school as well. All right. I wanted to quickly now pivot to standardized tests. Show of hands, who's given the GRE? Okay. And GMAT, nobody, right? So then all four of you GRE. So we're going to quickly do this. Sarah, 2 attempts, right? And you already
Yes.
said that the decision meant a lot to you, right?
Mhm.
But did it drastically change your college list? Tell us about what were the changes that it directly impacted.
So, I feel like unlike most people who get done with their GRE and then pivot onto the essays and the letter of recommendations, I was handling both of these things at the same time. So, when I gave my first attempt, so that was definitely overwhelming, and the results didn't turn out as expected. It was disheartening, but I knew I could do better. So I made the tough decision to kind of submit half of my colleges without the GRE. So, in fact, UIUC did not have my GRE score. So, so then I gave a second attempt, which turned out to be pretty good. And then I, kind of did my applications for the second lot, and I submitted my GRE for some of the colleges in the second lot. But I feel like do not let like one setback in your application process define you. You can always regroup, refocus, and come back stronger. So
Okay. I'm going to ask you an important question here. UIUC didn't need it. You
Mhm.
gave twice. Now,
Yes.
in retrospect, do you regret putting in all this effort and energy into the GRE? And you're like, dude, I could have just like, I don't know why I listened to these people and did the GRE. I could have just
Not at all. Not at all. Because I feel like it gave me so many options that to choose from. I had a really nice problem of choosing from a lot of options.
We're going to
So
talk about that later.
I know CMU had a requirement of GRE, and Columbia required the GRE as well. So I'm really glad I gave the GRE, and I honestly didn't want to look back thinking I didn't try my best. So
That's important.
I feel like I don't regret it one bit.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Kaushik, you took the GRE. You had work experience, 3 years. You could have just completely backed off on that and said, I'm just going to submit it to places that don't need it because I have so much work ex to show for it. But what was your reasoning to do it?
Yeah, so I mean, like every other component in the application process, I think the why is something that's really, so when it comes to these tests also, why am I taking it? My study background and work experience is from a design field, and I was transitioning into basically now I applied into a faculty of geosciences. I was also looking at data science, and what they really need to see is our quantitative reasoning ability. And I think that's what GRE helped show for. And that was one of the primary reasons why I sort of took up the GRE. But yeah, I mean, half the like Sarah, I think some programs didn't require it, some did. And I think it was better to just have it as a sort of this thing saying, hey, I can also do math. So, yeah.
Right. It's interesting you said that sentence, why am I doing the test? Because I think that was your question to your counselor, saying, hey, I
Yeah.
want to do a meeting with Tripti because this is my specific question for the meeting. So that came on to me as an agenda. So I'm like, oh, I'm meeting on my notebook. The agenda of the Kaushik meeting was, why am I doing the GRE?
Oh my
So
God, the
I had
word
that.
problems really. I think like after a few of those, I'm just like, why are we doing this? Why am I reading?
I remember. You looked like you were a child whose favorite toy had been taken away. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
But yeah, we
Why
needed to
am I
read.
memorizing like 300 words?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets hard. It gets hard. Agniba and Sachi, I'm going to ask you a different question for the two of you. Agniba, we start with you. What would be study strategies or timeline support strategies that you would want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, for the GRE specifically. So I've taken a standardized test before. I took the SAT for my undergrad, so I knew that I had to give myself enough time to prepare for it. I made sure to start researching about the GRE, think the December before, and then I started properly studying for it May, the end of May, start of June, and then I gave it in September. So I want to say I gave myself 3 to 4 months to properly go through a program specifically for the GRE. I used a bunch of the books, like the 5 Pound book. I use like official guides. I tried not to use anything that wasn't officially from the ETS because I know a lot of the questions can be different because the ETS uses specific questions. So, but yeah, that's the main things. I tried doing as many questions as possible, memorizing as many words as I could, and just trying to be as confident as I could come September, knowing that, I put all the effort I could into studying. So like if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well, but I haven't left anything up to chance. And I think that's what worked for me when I did my SAT, and it ended up working pretty well again for my GRE. So yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to share something here, guys. The GRE score is valid for 5 years. I worked with someone 3 years ago. They were in touch with me last week saying, I'm ready to apply for my next master's. Maybe it's an MBA. I don't know. Let's talk. And the one thing they were excited about is, I don't have to give that damn exam again. Can I just submit the same score? And I'm like, yes, you can. So your GRE can go into your MBA school or your next master's or PhD application, right, if you're doing it in the next 5 years. So kudos, guys. Y'all did a good job, and now it's done. For the next 1 year is done, so 4 more years. All
Can
right.
I just add one more thing?
Yes, Sarah.
So I agree with everything Anibha said, like all of the study strategies, but something that worked for me the second time around was just maintaining a list of, at least for the math section, like maintaining a list of questions I did wrong. I think that was a game changer because I can always go back to that list and see if I'm, making the same mistakes. So that really helped refine my, my study schedule.
Oh, that's great advice. Sarah, thank you for that. That's really, really good advice for any test taking, actually. Sachi, how about you? What would be your advice?
So I started preparing early for the GRE, mainly because I wasn't very confident about the quant part. So with that reason, I chose to study with a private tutor who was absolutely amazing. His teaching pattern worked well with me, gave me constant feedback, the mock tests and everything. And yeah, as Sarah rightly mentioned, I maintained a list of the wrong questions, like where I went wrong too. Plus, I also had a formula sheet handy. And he gave me an app. I can share it with you guys. He gave me an app where it was a vocabulary building basically, and it keeps showing you the words which were wrong the previous time. So by the 10th or the 11th time you probably just pitch perfect with those particular words. And one piece of advice that I would give is, if you're sure, even like 1% sure of pursuing a master's abroad, just take the GRE. As Tripti said, it is valid for 5 years. It, like, if you take it early, it really gives you a breathing room in case you need a reattempt also, and also removes a very big thing off your plate when the application season kicks in. The slot timing and all at the center gets really messy when it's peak application time. When I gave the GRE, it was off season. So trust me, I was giving the entire exam alone. And the vocabulary part was so easy because there was no disturbance. Otherwise, there are people like using the keyboard so loudly, and it's really annoying. So yeah, and I also made a study schedule which you have to follow religiously. There'll be days where you feel stressed, bored, overwhelmed, mixed emotions, etc. But just stick to that schedule. Even if it's an hour a day, just do it, because that discipline, that hard work and consistency really pays off.
Oh my God, I cannot, Sachi, thank you enough for sharing that, because timetabling is the best. I'm a very big stickler for timetabling. Any problem in life, put it in a timetable, the solution will find itself out.
Yeah.
If you just stick to it and commit. We are just 3 minutes off the clock and I have like a whole section and a half to go. Sarah, I know you are at the airport. Can we go a little over? Would that be okay for you?
I think I have 10 minutes.
You have 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to quickly wrap up. I'm going to skip the section which talks a little bit about beyond the application, because it's far more intellectual. I'm going to go into final decisions and reflections first, and then Sarah can leave, and then we can come back to that if we still have time. Sarah, we start with you. UIUC was not the final goal, so you did have plans to look at other universities, but then what made you finally decide on UIUC? And if you want to share other admits, then that's fine as well.
So UIUC wasn't always the obvious choice. I, of course, was strongly considering CMU. But what pulled me towards UIUC was its focus on core computer science. So I had an MISM admit from CMU. That was the only college I applied to for Masters in Information Systems Management. So I mainly chose UIUC. Sorry about the
That's okay.
yeah, I mainly chose UIUC because of its focus on core computer science and the flexibility of taking advanced courses early on during the semester. And of course, it has like top tier faculty and a strong alumni network, industry connections. Plus, as an international student, I felt it had better funding opportunities, which is of course something I took into consideration.
Okay, super, perfect. How about you, Sachi? Why LSC? What were your other admits? And what finally pivoted? Yeah, basically, what made you finally decide on LSC?
So LSE stood out for a number of reasons, but I was fortunate to receive admits from great schools like the Imperial College Business School, the Fordham University, Babson University, Boston University, and also Bentley University. But eventually, LSE felt right fit both academically as well as professionally. So my aim, as I've mentioned, has always been to join and eventually lead my family's business, which sits at a very good intersection of pharma and strategy. So the skills I will be gaining from the LSE program perfectly aligned with what kind of skills I want to develop for my future role. And another major factor was also LSE's global environment and the strong industry connections that I would develop. Studying in LSE and especially London gives you access to good and unparalleled networking opportunities, I would say. And although Imperial's finance and accounting course is very tempting, but I realized that I was more drawn to a program that would give me a broader exposure to management and the strategic frameworks rather than a purely finance focused role. Another personal factor for me was also location. I visited both the countries, US and UK, and I found that I was more gravitating towards London. I love the vibe of the city, and it's a global, fast paced, and also offers good opportunities. And LSC in particular felt like a perfect blend of both academic intensity and the international exposure that I was looking for. So overall, LSC wasn't just the most logical choice for me, but it was the one that felt most right for me.
So, you know what I really like that you said, Sachi, was that you did like the vibe of London regardless, but you did apply to both sides
Yeah,
of the pond.
both.
Because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm keeping my options open, and then when I
Options.
get my admit, I'll decide. And I think LSE is the perfect fit for you. It'll force you to push yourself out of the comfort zone, which is what a future leader needs. So
Definitely. Yeah.
great choice there. Um, we're going to talk to Kaushik now. Kaushik, urban transformation, studying global urban transformation in Utrecht versus studying at NYU, which
Yeah.
is the mecca of schmoozing, networking, and building the core corporate skills.
Mm.
This was a hard choice, I know, for the whole family.
Yeah.
So was it just the geopolitics that pivoted it? Because I feel like there's more there than just the geopolitics of it.
Yeah, I think there were multiple reasons and they were all sort of happening at the same time. I mean, there's no denying there's a lot that happened in the world in the last few months. But there was also they're both great programs, and I think they also have really good ecosystems that they seem to have built around them. I mean, NYU is at New York and it uses it as a sort of petri dish to study, which was really fascinating. But ultimately, there were also two different types of courses. One was information sciences, one was very data science driven, vocational. The other one is research driven, and they're also in two different systems. So some of the questions are also what after the degree, especially the kind of questions I have. What is the kind of ecosystem in which I will be able to thrive, that it's going to be supported, funded, all of these sort of things. There was also the question of cost. I think it was US versus Europe, and the amount of basically what happened was I think the NYU course sort of came out as a kind of high risk, high reward situation. And the Utrecht, this thing was a little bit less risky, but it's a slow, stable sort of growth within an academic setting. So I also had to like sit down and picture this and be like, okay, which one do I need right now? And that's where the
Really good way of looking at it. It's a really good way of looking at it. All right, I'm again very cognizant of time. Sarah, if you need to leave, I completely understand. I'm only going into the interview section now, and then we'll go into the final word. I don't even think we'll have time for Q&A, to be honest. So, Agniba, going to you now about interviews. Did anybody else have interviews besides Agniba? Sarah, you had interviews. Oh, okay, right. So, Agniba, we'll start with you, and let's go into quickly interviews. What were you asked, and any advice on prepping for interviews?
Yeah. I know going into the interview, it was kind of nerve-wracking because I didn't know what I was going to be asked. I remember reaching out on like subreddits and stuff, asking if anybody had gone through it before and what questions they were gonna ask me, but I don't think anyone got back to me. So preparing, I went on like the UCLA MQE website and just went through everything and anything that I thought was important. Made sure to look at the courses that they were offering, other extracurricular opportunities, and I wrote everything down that I thought would be something that they might ask me, and also something that might be important for me to bring up in my answers, and also as like additional questions. And then going into the interview, it was an online interview, and she asked me, there was three questions. So the first question was with regards to so part of the course we have a final seminar project. So she asked me what I would want to do for that one. for the final project, and so I tried tying it back to what I did in my senior seminar at NKU, and also tried tying my interests of like venture capital and like sports and finance and all of that. She then asked me about um, this was a personal or like a personality question. She asked me who I would want to go to dinner with, like any person in the world, dead or alive. And so I again that one there wasn't any there wasn't really a thought to it. I'd say Kobe Bryant because he's just like the GOAT. And then yeah, those were like the main questions that she asked me. It was a very short interview. Um, she also asked me about my background in terms of programming, and I have taken one programming class. I don't really have a background, so I made sure to explain the steps that I would be taking, like taking a course over the summer to make sure I have Python and programming basics before going into the NQE course, and talking about how I know that that's like a weak point, but it's something that I'm looking to address. Um, but yeah, it was like a 15-minute interview. There weren't any quantitative like questions that I had to solve, which I was kind of worried that that would be a part because I didn't know what to prepare specifically. But yeah, I think just the way I prepared worked for it. Obviously, different interviews are different, but this worked for me. So
Perfect. And Sarah, how about you? Was yours more technical? Because his seemed to be like a little more the get to know you alumni or admission officer interview. What about yours?
So I had two interviews, one with Columbia and one with CMU. So both of them were recorded interviews where I had sort of a minute per questions, and I had three questions. Um, I think I was extremely nervous before the interview and a little bit over prepared. But I think the interview process is mostly to at least the recorded ones, in my opinion, to see if you can speak fluently, communicate your ideas clearly. My advice would be to know your program, know your university, which, if you have gone through the entire process intentionally, I'm sure you would. I think my questions again just about were about my long-term and short-term goals, and what I like to do in my free time, and what I think about New York for Columbia. So yeah, I feel like most of it was a lot to do with what I've already mentioned in my SOP. So again, just knowing your application materials really well helps.
Helps. Got it. And while we have you unmuted and before we say bye to you, final advice for everybody else who's applying this year for 2026.
Okay, so the interview, like the whole application process, can be a journey of asking yourself the
That's my bad. Sorry.
no worries.
Final
So
word
the
of it.
entire interview, the entire application process can be a journey of self introspection, asking yourself the hard questions that you've been running away from since a long time. At least for me, it was. And it's a test of mindset over metrics, 100%. So no matter how strong or weak your application is, there will be days where imposter syndrome kicks in, but there will be days where growth kicks in too. So just trust the process and stay persistent, and eventually you'll watch everything come together, which
Wow,
is
that's a
very rewarding.
very rewarding. Agreed, Sarah. That's really good advice. Kaushik, how about you? Your final words of advice?
Um, okay, this is a hard one, but I think just being intentional about this, I think we tend to forget a lot of times, especially if you've been in the Indian institution system applications. You're as much as you are being picked by a university, you yourself are also picking the university. So you hold a lot of power here. And I think to be intentional every step of the way and asking why frequently, that would be my one word of advice.
That's amazing advice. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. Have a safe flight, and please do stay in touch. But Kaushik, your advice was very
Thank
on point. Like you have to create opportunities for yourself. So, and that's what you're saying. Just eventually know that you're in control. Agniba, what's your final word of wisdom for the people who are applying?
Yeah, this is a hard one. I like what Sarah talked about in terms of the introspection. You really look inwards a lot and learn a lot about yourself and what you want out of your next step in life and further. I think the biggest thing I would say is that regardless of how you go through the process or when, don't worry too much about the result. You're going to end up somewhere you belong, and it's all going to work out in the end, even if it doesn't. This is my third time going through the process. And when I tried transferring out of NKU, I didn't get into a single school, but that led me here. Uh, and it would have been a lot different if I'd gone somewhere else. So, yeah.
Believe, Agniba, that's amazing. Sachi, your final words of wisdom.
So, a quick heads up, everyone talks about essays, GRE, and deadlines, but what no one really warns you about is how emotionally draining the whole thing can be. It takes a ton of self-reflection and patience to get through it. As Trupti and I were just talking in this session, I took the maximum amount of time to frame my essay, and you're constantly being asked to define your goals, to justify your choices, and revisit your experiences in a way that feels not just meaningful, but feels meaningful, not just very impressive to the admissions committee. So that can get a little overwhelming, especially when you start doubting yourself whether you're doing enough or doing it right. So looking back, I think it's important to remind yourself that it's okay to not have all the answers at once. Start early, give yourself the space to think through, and don't hesitate to ask for help. I remember talking to Tripti directly, talking to my counselor as well, asking them what do I do. I've cried writing that essay because there was so much I did not know how to fit it in. But trust me, the red pen is the right place to be. They've been my mentors, my friend, all in one. And
Oh, that's amazing.
the-
That's amazing.
yeah, and also do not underestimate how much the process can teach you about yourself. I came out not just with an admit to the LSE, but with a sharper sense of what I want to do, which was just as valuable for me.
That's amazing, Sachi. And that's really good advice. That's really good advice that just be prepared. It's going to be an emotional process. It's almost like you're dating yourself suddenly. You're getting to know yourself. All right. My panelists today, Kaushik, Agniba, Sachi, thank you so much for your honesty, for your insights, your time, but also your trust. You know, each one of your counselor was different, and each one of you give us so much love and courage to kind of start working and etching, peeling those onion layers of you. And we really appreciated that opportunity that you gave us, and we're so proud of each of you. Please stay in touch. The alumni network group is there on LinkedIn. Get involved there, and I keep putting out messages every once in a while, but otherwise you can reach out to us. And thank you everyone who's tuned in today. You can get in touch with the Red Pen if you have any questions, and if you want to be connected with them as well, just let us know, and we will put you in touch with Agniba, Kaushik, or Sachi so they can answer any specific questions. Everybody else, have a great, great weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having